Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Celtics are slowly but surely looking like the team we expected coming into the year. Also, why do things seem off between Matthew Stafford and the Rams? And Kevin Durant has a good argument for best player of all time.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The Boston Celtics trying to head into the All-Star break on a high note, and it doesn't get any higher than Victor Wembanyama. Literally, he's enormous. But the Celtics found a way, a 116-103 win. Come on, it's a 23 and 29 team. But we have to sell this somehow. John Corrales in Boston from Locked On Celtics joins me now. And John, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is because this Boston team, they've been in and out of fifth gear so far in the first half here.
Sure.
We know what they're capable of, though, and we saw it, I think, at least for stretches in this one with KP and Tatum really taking the lion's share here.
Yeah, and look, they've been doing it, like no Jaylen Brown the last couple of games, no Drew Holiday for a few games. It's almost back to last season a little bit with guys being in and out of the lineup, but it not mattering. And in a funny way, it's actually maybe a little bit better with these guys in and out of the lineup because it's almost too many guys who need the ball. And so if you get a couple of them out here or there, then the rest of the guys can cook without worrying about, like, oh, am I taking too many shots? So the Celtics are, I think, back on track a little bit here. Tatum has been on a monster roll recently. He's been hitting everything. He's been controlling the game really well. Porzingis working his way back is finally looking like his normal self.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are all good things. The Celtics hit their struggles in mid-December. It's kind of like the things that have been bothering them before, reintegrating Porzingis, some cold shooting, that stuff has gone away. And now it's just about making sure the effort is there every night.
Yeah, and they only shot just under 33% from three in this game, but you get a Kristaps 10 of 16 performance. It only takes 4 3-pointers, and that's against Victor Wembanyama, who's controlling the paint. He's like, unicorn who? I was a unicorn when you were in middle school, brother. So this team last year in the second half, they ripped off a 20-2 run at one point. They were unbelievable. This team, after winning the title, probably doesn't need that, right? But do you need to see some consistency from them to feel like, hey, this is the team that they need to be?
A little bit more consistency, just a little bit more.
I mean, at an elite level, like they're top 5 in all the points. Like it's kind of weird to be quibbling over this, but we know how good they are capable of being.
Yes. It's. I would like to see it get back a little bit more like the first third of the season, their first 27 games where they were 21-6, and they're capable of doing that. I think. A little bit more consistency in terms of effort, energy, stuff like that. Not playing down to the competition, not seeing, hey, this team is missing 4 guys due to injury. Well, we don't have to try in this one. I definitely think there was some level of coasting. I've been saying this a million times. A lot of things happened at the same time. Porzingis coming back, yes, that changed things for the Celtics. Everybody got cold at the same time. Just his really horrible shooting. And along that same time, I think the guys kind of said, we know what it takes. Like I said, 21-6 to start the season. Yeah. That's an easy, we got it. We're fine. We're good. So I think everybody kind of let off a little bit. And now they're back to, they beat Cleveland. They beat New York. They beat New York pretty easily. They've had a nice little dominant run. Tatum is back to himself. Porzingis is back to himself. Guys like Derek White are starting to hit shots. Peyton Pritchard is hitting shots. This is the Celtics. This is the Boston Celtics. So, yeah, they hit a little bit of a skid. I think when we look back on it, we'll retroactively be able to say, oh, yeah, that's just a good team that kind of went through a lull in the middle of their season, and coming out of the break, if they can turn it on, then this just becomes a footnote.
You can stay up to date on the Boston Celtics all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Celtics on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Your Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, are Matthew Stafford's days in LA numbered? Before we answer that, Ohio State is hiring a former New England Patriots coach. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, combine live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Tonight's matchup between the Mavericks and Heat, a little enticing here as we head toward All-Star. The Mavs, well, they're kind of a house on fire right now, and the Heat, good thing for the Heat to be, are favored on the road. FanDuel likes Miami by 2.5 right now. FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet right now. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. The Ohio State Buckeyes saw their offensive coordinator go to the NFL, so now they're taking their defensive coordinator from the NFL. It is none other than Mr. Matt Patricia.
Started to wonder why Ryan Day would go this route when there is someone currently on staff that could fill that role. And then I thought about Matt Patricia in the NFL, what he did while he was leading the defense for the New England Patriots, his 8 years of calling plays for a defense, which is huge when you're thinking about bringing somebody in to lead the Buckeyes defense when Ohio State's trying to run it back in 2025. And I also think that year Matt Patricia took off was valuable for him as a coach. Yeah, he was with the Eagles for a little bit, but outside of that, in 2024, he wasn't coaching. He wasn't an analyst. He wasn't anything. He was just focusing on himself. And I read that he spent some time with Bill Belichick preparing and trying to dive into the college game. I didn't know that Matt Patricia was thinking about coming to college football, but it makes sense. You take a year off, you focus on yourself, you learn something new, and maybe you have to go down to a level you haven't been at since 2003 to get back to a level you want to be at.
On the hardwood, the Bucks traveled to face the Wolves. No Giannis, no Dame.
The Minnesota Timberwolves turned in an ice-cold shooting performance in a loss to the Dameless and Giannis-less Milwaukee Bucks on Wednesday night. I'm Ben Beacon, host of the Locked On Wolves podcast. The Bucks were down their two best players, their two superstars. The Timberwolves had Anthony Edwards, who was questionable coming into the game with the hip injury. Of course, no Julius Randle, no Dante DiVincenzo, but still, the Wolves were 6.5-point favorites on FanDuel headed into this. And it was a game the Wolves needed to have on the front end of a back-to-back OKC in town tomorrow night on the heels of a loss on Monday night, and the Wolves could not get it done. They ended up losing by 2. Anthony Edwards had 28 points, but it took him 33 shots to do it. He was just 4 of 17 on three-pointers and only got to the line 5 times. Only 4 assists on the night for Ant as well. Rudy had 20 and 14, and Naz Reid had 22 and 13. But this was just all about the Timberwolves unable to make baskets consistently. They were 22.7% on threes and under 38% from the floor in this game. We'll break the whole thing down over at Locked On Wolves.
And the Cavs, well, they totally blitzed the Raptors in Toronto.
Danny Cunningham from Locked On Cavs here after the Cleveland Cavaliers beat the Toronto Raptors in their final game of the first half of the season. Cavs moved to 44-10 with this win. It was DeAndre Hunter's second game as a member of the Cavs. He finished with 18 points coming off the bench. After he started in game number 1 with Cleveland, he came off the bench in this one because Max Strus was back. Strus missed Monday's game against Minnesota with an ankle injury. He returned, hit 4 3-pointers in his very first shift of the game. Cavs really took control from the start in this one. They led by as many as 39 points in the second half. They kind of let up on the gas the final 18 minutes or so of this game, but they have a lot to be excited about. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They now have won 4 straight as they head into the break. And these last 28 games, I think they'll be using a lot of time to experiment defensively, particularly with DeAndre Hunter, but also continue to just keep trying win games and hold off the Boston Celtics for that number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference.
the team that may have pushed the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles the hardest in the playoffs, the LA Rams, who were a Jalen Carter sack in the red zone away from a potential shocking upset in the snow in Philadelphia. Doug McCain from Locked On Rams joins me now. And Doug, the reason I'm talking to you right now is not because the Rams were close to beating the Eagles in the playoffs, but because they were close to beating the Eagles in the playoffs. And now we know Cooper Kupp is on the block, and there is uncertainty about the future with Matthew Stafford. Why are we at this place with the team at this point in their build?
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to lead into this topic in mentioning how close they were to hosting an NFC championship game against a rookie quarterback. They were 14 yards short of the NFC championship game. If it wasn't for Bo Limmer letting Jalen Carter get past him, you're probably looking at potentially a Rams-Chiefs Super Bowl. Who knows what would have happened there? I try not to think about it just because I don't want to go down that road. But how we got here is just, you look at last season. They restructured Matthew Stafford's contract that essentially took away the guarantees, and he was looking at basically a 1-year, $40 million contract. And yes, he's still under contract, but there's not a lot of guaranteed money. So because of that, they knew that they were going to have to get back to the negotiating table. And based on how this past year went, look, the Rams have made the postseason 2 consecutive seasons, and Matthew Stafford has been a big reason why. So I think the number one thing for me is, if you're the Rams heading into these negotiations with Stafford, it's, do you think that you can win a Super Bowl next season? Not in 2026, not in 2027. If you think you can win a Super Bowl next year with the young players that you have that you've hit on the draft that have emerged, with some potential free agents that you could pick up, can you win a Super Bowl with him? I think they can, and I think that you'll ultimately see Matthew Stafford sign a 3-year extension with the Rams and retire in Los Angeles. Maybe you might not want to hear that. I know the Giants are Malik neighbors. He has some interesting tweets, and I appreciate that. I don't know if you saw this, Peter. Matthew Stafford's wife, she posted a picture on her Instagram, Kelly Stafford. It was a blurry picture, and it was like the future's looking blurry. This is what we went through last offseason. I think that we're going to get to a contract sooner, and I think the Rams truly believe in the roster they put together. And if they hadn't have whiffed in free agency last year with guys like Jonah Jackson, who got replaced by a rookie in the 6th round in Bo Limmer, and a Colby Parkinson didn't work out, Trey White didn't work out. If you have success in free agency and you hit on the draft again, this team was so close to a Super Bowl. I think Stafford ultimately stays in LA.
Is there any appeal? I mean, this is a team that was the GM is famous for a expletive them picks mentality. It seems like Sean McVay can make chicken salad out of chicken something else. Is there any appeal, do you think, organizationally, to say, hey, look, if we could get like Sam Darnold in the building, and then we have the guy for the next 5, 6, 7 years versus Matthew Stafford for next year, and then we'll see how appealing do you think that would be internally to them?
See, that's kind of the $1 million question right there, is if they've identified someone out there that they can win with, not just now, but in the future, the present and the future, with another quarterback. And yeah, you look at Matthew Stafford's numbers since they signed that extension back in 2022, they don't blow your mind. But I do think at the end of the day that Les Snead is looking at the piece that he has that is tough to find. I mean, you can find other pieces at other positions. A Super Bowl winning quarterback with that level of talent, it could be years. I mean, we've lived through a lot of bad quarterbacks. I mean, this is a team that traded away the number 1 pick in the draft in Jared Goff to get Matthew Stafford. So clearly they've made shrewd, bold moves to get guys, and that guy was the one that got them over the top. I think there's more of a chance that they put pieces around Stafford to help him have success. I fully think that the Rams are going to be involved in the top receivers. I think T. Higgins makes all the sense in the world for the Rams. He's young, he's explosive. I think you pair him with a Puka Nacua, and you got Kyron Williams. I think maybe they draft Ashton Genty in the 1st round. I mean, I think that they're going to look to put pieces around Stafford, but if they truly believe there's a quarterback out there that could be their quarterback of the future, I think they consider it. But man, the connection between Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford is so strong. And just the eye test of seeing how he performs in big games still at this stage of his career, I think it makes it impossible to move on from him at this stage. He's too good. He's 37, just turned 37, and why not retire a Ram? And the fact that you hit on all these young pieces, you still have a chance to really compete for Super Bowl titles. It would be outrageous for the Rams to move on from him, considering how close this roster is from getting over the hump. And that was evidenced in the game that you mentioned at the top of this hit right here. I mean, they were so close to being the most talented team on the road in a freaking snowstorm. I mean, that doesn't tell you what Stafford brings to the table. I don't know what will.
You can stay up to date on the LA Rams all year long by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Rams on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, Kevin Durant has an argument to be considered the best basketball player ever. Michael Jordan or LeBron James? What about Kevin Durant? Locked On NBA host Matt Moore tells Doug Branson and Hayes that Kevin Durant has to be near the top of the list too.
Is it harder to guard a guy that's shorter, or is it harder to guard a 7-footer?
That's a great question. It's probably harder to guard in all fairness, it's probably harder to guard a 7-footer.
Okay, so the 7-footer's got a better shooting percentage, and he's harder to guard.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's an argument that if you take out the word greatest and you replace it with best, and we look at what this guy did in every facet, and I'm talking the details, right? Footwork, positioning, form, finishing, everything. I think there's an argument. Kevin Durant's the best player of all time. Best, not greatest. Not greatest. Your
best player or best scorer?
Best player of all time?
Best player. All around.
See, that's where it gets difficult to judge errors, because like some of the players that he's passing up played in so much more of a physical era with less spacing. And so that's why I don't personally like comparing errors, because when you do that, there's so much different things in pace,
but
and
you
spacing,
also
and things that get into that conversation.
But you also had illegal defense, right? Like, that's the counter there. It's like you had illegal defense. Like, you didn't see the kind of mechanisms were entirely different. I just think when you look at Durant and you look at what he's able to do as a scorer, but as an overall basketball player, because he is he's really good at so many things. There's nothing Kevin Durant's bad at. Like, there's nothing he's bad at. Now, there's a lot he's not great at, right? I think, like, Jordan's a better defender, no question, right? But I think when you look at the overall combination plus that size, like, I just can't get over it. This guy is in the range of being 50, 40, 90 as a 7-footer. And that's just absolutely ridiculous. That's just absolutely absurd. And he's one of the most, I think if you're talking about scoring presences, I definitely think that there is a strong argument to be made. I'd have to do weeks of research, I think, to reach an answer, but I would probably start with Kevin Durant.
The way we judge these things can be totally skewed. Kevin Durant has 2 rings earned in Golden State when they were clearly better than everybody else. Kevin Durant was the best player on that team, but they were just better than everyone else, and everyone else kind of knew it. It was an all-time weird thing. The other chances that he had, Oklahoma City, it was the Warriors who beat them and really shouldn't have. Kevin Durant was a reason why. It's also crucial to the legacy of Kevin Durant that he left Oklahoma City and went to Golden State. And then when that situation got toxic, he left and went to Brooklyn. Might as well have been New Jersey. And guess what happened in that situation? It got toxic. So he got traded to Phoenix. And what is that situation right now, guys? Anyone want to raise their hand and tell the class? It's toxic. At some point, it has to reflect negatively on the lasting career images of Kevin Durant, that everywhere he's been has turned sour. Because all he wants to do is hoop. He doesn't really care about culture. He's not on the group text trying to get everybody to go out to dinner together. It's not who he is. He wants to show up, play basketball, and go home. He's not quite the Wilt Chamberlain of his era. He's one of the most unstoppable basketball players I've ever seen. And when he wanted to be in Golden State for a couple seasons, he was also an elite defensive player. But he hasn't been that his whole career. He's an incredible scorer, and still at this age, still, when he's healthy, an unstoppable scorer, frankly. But Jokic has won more MVPs. Giannis has won more MVPs, been the best player in the league for longer. And they never got to play with Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson in their primes. They should have gone back to back, but injuries scuttled that in Golden State. But again, they built the superest of super teams. Best player ever? Come on. Kevin Durant is not even close to Kobe, much less Jordan and LeBron. This is ridiculous. And finally, Taylor Swift was shown on the Jumbotron at the Super Bowl. And in a situation that even seemed to swerve Taylor Swift, and she is pretty unflappable in public situations, it seems. She was like, what is happening? Getting booed? Saquon Barkley, presumably why this was happening. Eagles fans see Taylor Swift, who's dating the Chiefs player, Travis Kelce. Saquon Barkley didn't like it. He said, we're trying to expand the game, and her being a part of it is only helping it. I don't get the dislike she's getting, Barkley said. Of course, the majority of the booing probably done by fans in green, and they booed Santa Claus. So I guess Taylor Swift, you're in good company. And let's be honest, did Santa Claus ever have a tour as successful as the Eras Tour? Be serious. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up, who's in the best position to challenge the Thunder in the West as we head to the All-Star break? So at least until tomorrow, stay Locked On Sports Today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.